I'm Angela and I work at the ideaLAB, a makerspace at Denver Public Library. Today we'll make a small project, but you can use the techniques in this video to make a different size or design. There are lots of possibilities for customizing this project. Let's get started. To follow along with this video, you'll need a printed pattern to trace. We have a PDF that has 2 pages that you can download and print. It's linked in the description below. A fabric to make your project out of. When choosing your fabric, you want to look for something that doesn't fray along the edges. You'll also want a pen or a pencil to trace your pattern onto your fabric. For dark fabrics, you can use chalk or a white colored pencil. Some thread or embroidery floss to stitch your project together. A needle that matches your thread, so I've got a small needle and a large needle here. A pair of scissors, and some sewing pins or clips to hold your fabric together while stitching. You'll also need something to stuff your project with. You can use fiberfil stuffing from a craft store, some scraps of fabric, or even some cut-up plastic bags. Don't forget decorating supplies. You can use all sorts of things to decorate your plushies. You can glue them on or sew them on. Some optional supplies you may find helpful are a hot glue gun or craft glue for attaching decorations, and a needle threader. The first page of the pattern includes 3 shape options for your plushie's body. We'll decorate the front piece and then attach it to one of the back pieces. I like style C that reminds me of a cat, so that's what I'm going to cut out. The second page has some optional pieces for decorating your plushie with. After you've cut all of the pieces, you can use them to help plan what you want your design to look like. Now we're ready to trace our pattern pieces on the fabric. I'm using felt, so before I traced it, I just tested it a little bit to see if this pen would rub off. I'm going to hold my pattern piece against the felt and just mark around the edges. If you're using a dark fabric or felt, you can use a white colored pencil or chalk for this step. Now we can cut out all of our shapes. Before we stitch our plushie together, let's plan the decorations. For my cat, I think I'm going to glue the belly on instead of stitching it. So I'm just going to glue the top of the belly and leave the bottom open so that there's no glue where I'm going to stitch along the bottom. To learn how to sew on buttons and other details, check out the links in the description of this video. It can be much harder to add these with a needle and thread after stuffing the plush, so I like to decorate before putting the pieces together. Here are some other examples of decorated projects that are ready to be stitched together. Let's layer the pieces together in the way that we want to attach them. So I have the front of my cat on the back, and then I have a tail that I want to stitch together. So I'm going to put it right in between those 2 pieces with enough overlap so that when I stitch, it will catch the end. To help keep the pieces together while we stitch, we can use some pins or sewing clips. So I have a sewing pin, and I'll pick up all the pieces, and I'm going to push it through the fabric to the back and then back up so that it holds those pieces together. If you don't have sewing pins, you can use a sewing clip. A binder clip will also work. You can try a paper clip or even a clothespin. I'm going to use sewing clips for mine, so I will clip around the edge every so often to hold the pieces together. To stitch the pieces together, use a running stitch along the edge of the front body piece, leaving the bottom open for stuffing. I like to use a long piece of thread doubled over. 20 inches is about the right length to go all the way around the edge. If you don't have a ruler, you can measure along the long side of a piece of printer paper. Next, thread the needle. I'm using embroidery floss, which can be tricky to get through the eye of a needle. I'm going to use a needle threader to help me. Long pieces of thread can get tangled easily, so I'm going to smooth this out before tying my knot. Now we're ready to start stitching. I'm going to start on this corner, but you can use the other corner too. And pull up and then back down. Looks like I have a little extra tail. I pulled too fast. So if that happens, I can pull this stitch up a little bit and make sure my knot is on the back and tight against that, and then pull. I'm ready to stitch right here so I can remove my clip. And I'm going to pinch just to make sure the tail doesn't fall out while I'm sewing. When you get to a piece that you're stitching in between, you want to make sure that your needle is going through all the layers. To help you plan your stitches, you can also draw a line around the edge where you want to do your running stitch. Make sure not to catch any tails or arms in the thread. And check the back of your project every so often to make sure the stitches are nice and tight. You can use a matching thread so that you don't see your stitches, or you can use a contrast thread like I'm doing so that it adds a little bit of extra decoration to your project. When you're using a long piece of thread like this, it can get tangled, so go slowly and check your project every so often. When you get to the bottom edge, you can either leave your needle and thread so that you can stitch across later, or you can tie a knot here and use a new piece of thread to stitch across after you've done your stuffing. So now I'm ready to stuff the project. I'm going to use some of the stuffing and push it into the opening that I left in my plushie. You can use your hands for this, or if you have small parts that you're stuffing, you can use a pencil to help get it all the way in there. I like my plushie to be squishy but not too thick. If I put too much stuffing in here, it will be really hard to close this back up. I'm going to take a little bit of that out. Now we're ready to sew the bottom seam. And I'm going to continue my stitching. If you're using a new piece of thread, just start at the end and go across. When I get to the end, I can tie my finishing knot underneath those other stitches and cut any loose ends. After making sure your stitching is secure and no stuffing is getting out the edges, you can continue decorating or fix up anything that came loose. Here are some finished plushie projects, all made with these patterns. The creative choices you make in decorations and style can really create unique plushies out of the same basic shapes. If you want to learn more about plushies, check out some of the resources I've linked in the description, including some books from the Denver Public Library catalog. If you want to show off what you've made, tag us on social media with ideaLAB Makes. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a group just for the ideaLABs, and on Instructables where we have even more projects to try out.